we have to keep talking about the shooting in Tucson because the level of sophistry out there needs to be reined in. Did our political discourse really have anything to do with it? And will these killings impact debate on the legislative challenges that still lie ahead? We have assisting me in the opining department, friend of the show, none other than David Pakman, liberal host of the internationally syndicated radio and television program, The David Pakman Show, heard in over 120 cities and towns on DirecTV as well as Dish Network, also at davidpakman.com. That's Pakman. David, welcome to Battle Line.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Good to have you. Good to have you. Some of these liberals out there are starting to dial things back a bit. Originally, they were making connections between the shooter, Jared Loughner's hideous acts on that fateful day in Tucson, Arizona, and the rhetoric from conservative commentators. We're now seeing that this guy is somebody whose favorite publications happen to be the Communist Manifesto and Mein Kampf. He also liked to killing Mockingbird. I don't know what that means. Additionally, we find out that schoolmates, classmates, friends and family all thought he was a nutcase. And you got a state like Arizona, which makes it very easy for people who are perceived to be somewhat wacky to get reported and perhaps to be brought in for assessment and maybe eventual incarceration to protect both themselves as well as others. What was your sense of the idea that some right out of the gate wanted to make attributions of political motives to this guy? People like Pulitzer Prize, or I should say Nobel Prize winning economist Paul Krugman out of the New York Times.
Yeah, right out of the gate we heard from both sides trying to show that Jared Lee Loughner was associated with the other side. On my radio show, I actually said that I think it's a bit of a distraction because the reality is we have a couple of indications he may have been liberal or he may have been conservative or he was involved with a white supremacist, anti-Semitic internet forum. To me, it's kind of irrelevant. I'm thinking of the fact that whatever his personal politics are, if we look at the media and if we look at the political discourse, where is the majority of the violent rhetoric, the calls to arms, the ideas that violence is an actual solution to political disagreements? Where's the majority of that coming from? And there it's very clear that it is from the right.
Only if you abridge your search engines. Actually, I find it to be disproportionately from the left. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and put forward to my producer a request that he get together a couple of clips. One of the clips will be clip 8 of Ann Coulter, and then the next one I want to be of clip 3, and this would be Mike Malloy as well as Tom Hartman. Tom Hartman, very friendly guy. I know him. As a matter of fact, he's in the studio right behind me.
Yeah, I work for Tom.
Well, there you go. You have worked for him before. Okay, interesting. Well, let's first hear clip 8 with Ann Coulter, and then clip 3. I'll tell you what. I'll just keep talking with you, and then my producer will tell me in the earpiece when he's all set. David.
Yeah, and you know what? Here's the thing.
Go ahead.
We can come up with clips from both sides, but let's honestly talk about the memes and the discourses that exist. And I would be hard pressed to be convinced that calls to arms, the idea of people are going to take away our guns. By the way, it's always conservatives saying liberals are going to take away our guns. And the idea that people need to reload and so on and so forth. We can find examples to fill a 1-hour radio show from both sides. But if we look at a year or 2 years or 5 years, it is from the right, Alan.
We have heard Jeremiah Wright get such a pass as to just belie credulity. Reverend Wright had some incendiary, hateful things that he was saying over and over and over again. And yet, when that happened, we were hearing all of his defenders insist that he was not being racist, he was not being bigoted, and he was not being vile. It does strike me, again, both parties. It does seem as if both parties will give a pass to their own for that which they would never tolerate from others. And then on top of that, it's probably just because each refuses to hold himself up to the same standards to which he subjects others. But in the aggregate, you will see in the blogosphere much more hateful speech on the left than you do on the right. Far more so. And you also hear a greater inclination to start controlling free speech from the left than you do the right. We have Representative Louise Slaughter. By the way, Zach, do we have any of those clips ready? I guess he can't hear me. Anyway, we have Representative Louise Slaughter suggesting the Federal Communications Commission was not working anymore, adding that she would look at ways to better police language on the airwaves. And then you've got Congressman Clyburn right now. He's the third highest ranking Democrat in the House. And by the way, he's also the daddy of Mignon Clyburn, who's serving as FCC commissioner. But he's out there saying we ought to bring back the fairness doctrine. Now,
Alan,
Bob,
I have to say, we can have that discussion, but I think we're in the weeds if we're talking about policing internet speech and bringing back the fairness doctrine.
this is their response to the this is their response to the horrific event in Tucson, Arizona. So it has a direct relevance here. I don't want to get into the weeds. I'm not going to get into the minutia. I always say I'm always worried about losing the clarity of the forest for the trees of minutia. The fairness doctrine would just impose upon all radio stations the requirement that they give equal time to both sides of the aisle, which made sense 100 years ago, but no longer because of a multitude of media outlets. But when they start threatening to do this, they're forgetting that the First Amendment protects free speech. The abridgment, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and petition the government for redress of grievances. You're going to right now, if this ever went through, have certain people saying, well, certain objections can't be raised because they might be misinterpreted by nutcases out there, and for that reason we have to curtail your dissent. Aren't you worried about that?
What? I mean, this is a valid argument, but I have to say, in the immediate wake of this violent act, to me personally, it's much more relevant to think about, well, how many bullets would Jared Lee Loughner have had if the assault weapons ban had not expired? That to me is a right now violence curtailing thing we can discuss. Let's discuss.
That assumes that the bad guys couldn't still get a hold of guns. That assumes such a thing.
No, listen, you're right. Bad people could still get a hold of guns.
I mean, by your measure, think about it. By your measure, any argument could be expanded into a multitude of other arguments, allowing someone to escape from their half of the original rub, their half still not being properly defended in an argument. In a Socratic dialogue, point, counterpoint, counterpoint, counterpoint. We cannot say that the rights of the many should be curtailed to any degree because of the potential abuses by the very, 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 very few. And that's what concerns me.
Then let's not have any gun control at all, instead of even having the instant back. I mean, we can also go back up the ladder that way. My point is, I don't think, on the issue of guns, I don't think that people should not be allowed to have guns. But really, do you need 33 bullets in a clip? Isn't 10 enough? And maybe that would have saved a few people this time. Just one example.
And once you have 10, is 10 really necessary? Why can't we just have 5? Where do you draw the line?
I like where you're going with that, Alan.
Where do you draw the line?
No, you bring up a good point. I don't know where you draw the line, but this is a specific case where 33 to 10, we already had legislation. We were scared. We were made scared liberals would take our guns, and now we've got 33 bullets. Okay, well, this is the type of thing that happens.
I'm just always worried of the rights of the many being potentially dampened or curtailed because of the abuses by the very, very few. Because then we find ourselves in a very intellectually abridged posture, if you will. We're essentially taking a peripheral observation and inferring it as if it were a conclusive analysis, and then we're turning around with a pivot and sending it out in the same fashion. When Paul Krugman of the New York Times comes out and says, I don't have any proof that this was politically motivated, but I really think it is, to me, that's not just intellectually disingenuous. That's academic buffoonery. Where am I wrong?
I'm not going to listen. Paul Krugman can say whatever he wants. I read that column. I don't read all of his stuff. But what I just as a layman, as a very basic, fundamental observer of
did you think it was a responsible thing for a guy who knows he's very well read, who's very widely read, to say just 2 hours after the shooting?
I just can't. I don't know what Paul Krugman's ethics should be. I don't know exactly how many hours after he can comment. What I can say, though,
that's expanding an argument into that same old multitude of other arguments. I am in a very linear fashion asking, was it responsible for a widely read writer to say such a thing just 2 hours out of the gate?
If he had information he believed to be accurate, then yes, in retrospect, we'll see what it turns out to be.
Well, given that such a subjunctive can't be satisfied except by the mind of Krugman, we'll have to let it go there. David Pakman, thanks a lot. We appreciate it. Folks, you are with Battleline, Main Street Radio Network. I'm Alan Nathan. Radio Network, I'm Alan Nathan. Radio Network, I'm Alan Nathan.